adjust on the fly and adapt is to make the process of collecting questions, asking questions smoother. So we're going to implement some technology adjustments pretty quickly. I'd like to invite you to our second panel. The first speaker in the second panel is Jan Fransoo from the Eindhoven University of Technology. I've run into Jan in professional settings now for, perhaps this reveals our age, more than 10 years, between 10 to 15 years or more. And one of the things that Jan does, in addition to being a professor of operations management and logistics at the Eindhoven University of Technology, is that he serves as vice president of Dynalog. And Dynalog is the Dutch Institute for Advanced Logistics. Many of us who are in the supply chain area got a wonderful opportunity to see Dynalog, its facilities and its connections during a conference that they hosted in July. And I tell you, it's sort of one of the things that's great to learn, and I wish we could emulate it, is the level of cooperation between sort of the Dutch government, the industry, the people from the ports, and the role of academia. And I think one of the things that at least I left intrigued with, and the moment I came back, I mentioned to Mary, I mean, they have a fabulous setup. Jan's going to give us a sense of how that operates. And he's also a very accomplished academic with a lot of very significant presence in the academic arena. And one of the things that I find particularly intriguing is Dynalog's ability to go from ideas in academia, some funding from the government, into commitments that they've made to potentially create job opportunities and an entire industry in the area of advanced logistics. So without further ado, Jan Fransoo.
Okay, thanks very much, Anand. Let's see if it works. This works, actually. Okay, so I'll talk briefly this morning about Dynalog, the Dutch Institute of Advanced Logistics, and I'll talk both about the institute itself, what we're trying to accomplish, and the campus that is associated with that. Actually, I'm talking in my role as Vice President of Dynalog, being an academic of the board of the institute. I'm actually the only academic on the board. There are 6 other people on the board, and they're all representatives of the industry, the Dutch port, and the Dutch government. So I would like to start off by setting the scene a little bit by talking about an example of a large multinational chemical company that I've actually worked with for many years. Actually, this is an American company. And they have dozens of businesses throughout the world, these chemical companies. I think they operate more than 100 integrated chemical facilities across the world. And they have thousands of planners in terms of operational decision makers in this company. So this could be people that do sales and operations planning, business planning, customer order planning, but also down to the detail of detailed planning of production orders and transportation. Now, if you look at the situation in the pre-1990s, basically the way this was organized in this company was that virtually all of these functions were conducted at these manufacturing locations. So on site, they were doing all of these functions, from sales and operations planning down to transportation dispatching. And about 10 years ago, when I was working with this company, they started centralizing a number of these functions. And the way they centralized this was per region. And with a region you could think of the Americas, Europe, Middle East, and Asia. That's roughly how most of these companies define their regions. And then in these regions they had different business units, and each of the business units would then have a centralized location where they would do their business planning functions, sales and operations planning, production planning, transport planning. So with the exception of production scheduling and transportation dispatching, so something that was really close to the operation, they would still do this at the manufacturing location. Where are they right now? The transport dispatching is still done on site. The production scheduling also moved into the centralized location. One of the things that they implemented last year, in fact only 6 months ago, was that they have co-located all of the planners, all of the planning functions across these business units. I think there are about a dozen different business units in this large chemical company. They have co-located them into a huge planning center. And there are about, I think there are about 300 planners there, from sales and operations planning all the way down to production scheduling. Still regional. So for Europe, they have a location in the Americas and a location in Asia, mainly driven by issues, by two main issues. One is the time zone issue, and secondly is a cultural issue. They tried offshoring some of these functions, for instance, to India, but they actually took this back because there the gap in terms of being in contact with customers at the plants was actually shown to be too big. Now, why am I saying this? This is something that I'm observing at quite a few companies, that they are centralizing in one way or another supply chain and more operational planning functions into bigger centers. This is the chemical company, but also if you look at the way that Procter & Gamble has been doing this in Europe, Unilever has been doing similar type of concentration of these functions. And companies are doing this in order to sort of plan all these different operations, from actual operational planning to managing contracts for logistics services, and arranging collaboration with other companies. And this is actually where the starting point was for the Dynalog initiative. Because we see that there are quite a few companies who are taking steps beyond the, let's say, more or less what we in supply chain now traditional vertical collaboration, so collaborating with your suppliers and customers. Also moving towards more horizontal collaboration. Horizontal collaboration could be with complementary companies. I always find a very interesting example, small scale example, of a Dutch manufacturer of jams. You know, the jams that you eat for breakfast, not the jams that you find in your printers. The jams that you eat for breakfast. And when they were shipping out products in transportation, you know, jams these are very heavy with a high density weight products. So that means you can only fill up your truck half because you reach the weight limit. And there's still a lot of space left. Now what the manager of this plant did, he started thinking, well, what other product could actually fit in my truck where I can fill this and not have a weight limit? And he thought this could be sanitary paper, toilet paper. So he basically contacted in the same area where it was located, turned out it was a toilet paper manufacturer. They integrated their warehouses, they have a joint operating warehouse, and they ship out together to the retailers. Now this is a very simple example by which you can create benefits by working with other companies in a horizontal way together. These large corporations are centralizing this. Of course, cost reduction, the example that I just gave, but also performance improvement, because once you do this type of collaboration, you can deliver much better services to your customer. For instance, for this jam and toilet paper manufacturer, actually mean they could increase the frequency of delivery to the retailer without increasing cost. Moreover, there is an important motivation increasingly that what we see in Western Europe in any case is to attract supply chain talent. So talent is scarce, good people are very scarce, and for many companies it's not so easy to attract the right talent. But if you concentrate this in larger settings, actually you make the working environment much more interesting because you have more opportunities to promote within the supply chain profession, to get higher level jobs, to learn from others in the same profession. And last but not least, to speed up innovation. Because when I am together with more people, either within the same company through this co-location of business units, or by collaborating between different companies, actually the learnings go much faster. I get many more opportunities to actually learn and to do. And this implies that we see that apart from these large companies that are sort of centralizing across business units, we have now undertaken a number of initiatives with more smaller sized companies, typically companies, let's say, under roughly $1 billion revenue, still large, could be large companies, but under $1 billion revenue, to sort of merge their supply chains together and start sharing all types of different operations in the supply chain function between these companies. And this is what we have called cross-chain collaboration. And the centers where this is happening we call cross-chain collaboration centers, and the abbreviation is 4C. And in a cross-chain collaboration center, basically multiple companies, they share supply chain functions. That's basically the concept. And the idea is, well, if I'm a $500 million company, probably I have half an FTE who's working on forecasting. This half an FTE who's working on forecasting can never develop to be a specialist in forecasting. But if I share this amongst multiple companies, I can attract real specialists. I can share this functionality across these companies that are collaborating in this way. So that is an example. We have, at the moment at the campus that I'll talk about in a minute, also a startup that is conducting cross-chain collaboration for service parts. So service parts in the manufacturing industry, if you manufacture equipment, you have a responsibility for service parts. Now for many companies, it's actually very hard. There is, Anand knows a lot about this, there's tons of actually extremely good research that's been implemented by the larger companies like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, to actually implement very advanced technology to better manage your service parts. For smaller companies, it's very difficult to actually do this because of the access to the technology, the amount of talent that you need, the number of people, specialist people. But if you do this together, you have these opportunities. Now, this is sort of the background. Now, what do we do in Dialog? Actually, within Dialog, our ambition is to facilitate different industries, companies, to obtain benefits from centralization, collaboration, and innovation. It's basically what we try to do. So facilitate industry. And we do that essentially by two different means. One is the Dialog Institute, and the other one is the Dialog Campus. The Dialog Institute, it's an institute which runs an innovation program. So the objective of the institute is actually conduct a number of projects by which we can show that this cross-chain collaboration is possible between different, between companies, but also between ports. We have projects where we have multiple ports virtually operating as if they are on one port. We have the airport being involved, Amsterdam Schiphol Airport, which is one of the largest freight airports in Europe. The program is a 62 million euro program, which has been seeded by 25 million euros of the Dutch government. And the remaining funding comes from industries, companies that participate in the program. What we do is we develop knowledge through applied research. We develop software and management insights to actually make these centers, these cross-chain collaboration centers, possible. And there's quite a lot to be done. And we have actually, in theory, we have already quite some backgrounds. For instance, there is in supply chain management, there is a lot of research on so-called game theory and contract setting. Now, all this theory is really theoretical in a sense. But a number of the concepts actually can be very useful to be translated into business practice. This is what we try to do over here. For instance, in projects, together with companies being involved. At the moment, we started, actually our official launch date was 1st of January 2010. So we have existed now for a little more than a year. We have at the moment more than 100 companies involved. And these are large multinational companies. So this is the Unilevers, the Nikes, etc. But also small, medium-sized enterprises, logistic service providers. Kuehne+Nagel, for instance, is a very important partner. IT companies and small startups. So we really want the Dynalog Institute to be a catalyst for startups. Typically, most of these startups are spin-offs from universities like ours. We have about 10 universities involved, and then we also have the two main logistics hubs in the Netherlands involved, which is the Port of Rotterdam and Amsterdam Airport. You may or may not know, but in the Netherlands, logistics and supply chain is really extremely important part of the national economy. I think I have actually on one of the slides some numbers, but in case I don't have it, I'll already tell you. So for the Dutch, the total, to give you a little bit of perspective, the total export value of the Dutch economy is about 400 billion euros annually. Of this, 42 billion euros is in logistics and supply chain. So this is it's more than 10% of our economy. In addition, it employs about 750,000 people out of a total labor force of about 8 million. So it's also about 10% of the labor force working in the logistics and supply chain industry. And a lot of that is obviously connected to our, let's say, our physical position and the tradition we have with the Port of Rotterdam, actually going back several centuries, when we had the Dutch East India Company running a hub and spoke system in Asia. I can tell you about that also if you like. So we had this tradition in physical logistics, and we really want to build on this now by also taking a huge step in supply chain. Now, so the institute is actually the catalyst, the facilitator. It's a small institute. It only employs, I think, 4 full-time equivalent staff, but they involve with all of these different projects. Of course, they have access to researchers at many different universities and developers in these companies. Now, around the institute, we are developing a campus. This is a greenfield facility, which is fully dedicated to supply chain management activities. So this is not going to be logistics, they're not going to be warehouses. We have plenty of warehouses in the Netherlands. The Netherlands is almost like one big warehouse if you drive through the country. But this is actually the campus where we would like to control these supply chains. In the view of the development that I showed you at the beginning of my talk. So this could be control towers of large corporations, 4Cs, and service providers. These are dedicated facilities. These will be the only type of companies with activities that will be allowed to be in this greenfield operation. Now, what is very important is that the entire campus is based on the open innovation principles. So, open innovation basically entails that sharing is better than hiding. So in terms, if companies want to participate in this campus, they need to embrace this open innovation principle. This translates, for instance, in very operational requirements that any company on the campus is not allowed to operate its own restaurant facilities or labs, but has to take part, has to make use of the joint facilities in the campus. But also with regards to pre-competitive development, there are a lot of, let's say, measures to actually facilitate sharing. We have experience with these type of campuses in the Netherlands in the R&D arena. There are a number of these campuses that are actually very successful in the dairy field and in the high-tech field. This is just an idea of companies that participate in the network. This is the board. Actually, I think the people are probably not that interesting to you. I think the only thing that's probably interesting is if you look at the executive board, all of these people, they're really industry leaders in the Netherlands. They really put their head up. A few slides I have, if I have time, about the campus. I'll be finished in a few minutes. At the moment, we still have we call a temporary office. It's a small building where at at the ground floor, we have basically the staff of the institute and a number of meeting facilities. Armand visited us last summer. And at the second and third floors, at the moment, we have an incubator for small startup companies. I think there are at the moment 15 or 20 startups, exclusively again in the supply chain area. The building is actually located right here, and this is the area that we have to develop, the greenfield. It's located next to the main artery between the Rotterdam and Amsterdam, the Rotterdam and Antwerp port, and the high-speed rail line from Amsterdam to Paris. So it has excellent geographical connections. The high-speed rail line should open anytime soon. This is still greenfield. There's still corn at the moment, but we're cutting the corn and starting to build later this year, January 2012. There are a number of companies that have already committed to positioning itself on the campus. One of the things that's actually hard sometimes in developed countries is to build these type of campuses fast. They're always envious of China and India where they do all of these things. We think actually that a big constraint on building these things fast is actually the construction industry, the supply chain in the construction industry. And we are in the process of making a deal with the Dutch construction industry to make this an example project of excellent supply chain management in the construction industry. And our ambition is to develop the first phase of construction within 100 days next year. So normally this would take probably about a year and a half. We want to do this in 100 days. We really have the construction industry engaged to make this an example. We say, well, why don't, if this is going to be a supply chain campus, this is to be an example of good supply chain in construction. Well, this has some further information. This is the size. So this is where I made my calculations this morning, because I don't need the numbers in Dutch, but it's 33 acres that we have. This is sort of the number of people that we're targeting to be there. And about 1 million square feet in office space, which will gradually be phased over time. The central construction, so that's this part of the campus, this will start in January 2012 with the actual building, and that's where we'll start with the shared facilities. We have attracted private investors to actually invest in these shared facilities. Which is an investment of about 13 million euros for the initial phase. And growing up to 100 million to invest this entire phase here. On the campus, we actually want to link this whole culture of innovation in supply chain with the actual physical campus activity. So that's sort of my dream, or our dream, to actually make this happen. I think we will be stretching this, but I think, let's say, I'm very happy with the progress that's being made there after the initial idea was developed a few years ago. I think one of the key reasons why we got the commitment of the Dutch government is because we try to make our ambitions monetary. And so out of this 42 billion in added value of the Dutch supply chain sector, currently our estimate is that about 3 billion is in these type of supply chain control activities, and our ambition is to triple this to 10 billion by 2020. And that's how we measure also the projects, to what extent can they contribute to generating value. And this, I think, is also an interesting way, because usually in supply chain we talk about reducing costs. But here we also want to stimulate people who want to do projects, think about value. How can you create value? Well, that's it. I think this sort of covers it. There's obviously nice pictures of the campus and how this will be developed. If you have any further questions, you can email us. Also on the website, www.dynalog.nl, there is a lot of information. You can download presentations like this also from the website. Thank you.